This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Hi guys, I'm Carl Gruber, author of the new book True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. Are you tired of being caught in the web of negativity that our ego-driven world mandates as reality? Say one positive thing and all you hear is, get real, get your head out of the clouds and prepare for the worst. Well, I'm here to tell you that negativity is not reality, and that the opposite is true. This is why I have written and published this book. In my new book, I show you how you can walk hand in hand and in alignment with the law of attraction and eternal universal spiritual truths, which will allow you to make all the positive, loving, happy, abundant, and healthy things you desire your reality. Find out how you can become a consistent co-creator of your life with the universe and get out of that negative spiral of lack, attack, and judgment. Get your copy today of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship by Carl Gruber, now available as an ebook and paperback on Amazon. It's time once again for yet another awesome episode of this podcast, World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. Welcome and thanks for joining us. For over 4 years now, this show has been at the forefront of investigating and questioning just now, why now, more than ever, the people of the world are awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. We've had some of the world's best teachers, experts, authors, masters, and ascended masters speak to us one-on-one with their answers and ideas as to why this enlightenment is now occurring. Now, in a moment, we'll pursue the same path with an amazing woman of light, love, and truth. But first, I ask you to take a moment to check out my brand new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, a book that will show you how to grab a hold of the beautiful tango going on between the oneness of these two topics, law of attraction and true spirituality. That will help you to build a rock-solid personal foundation for yourself, so that you can become a consistent co-creator with the universe and creating the life you truly desire to live. It's now available on Amazon and as an ebook or a paperback. I knew I had to throw that in there. All right, I'm totally stoked to welcome back for her second visit to World Awakenings my special guest, Corinne Zupko, author of the best-selling book From Anxiety to Love, and now an ardent student of the Modern Spiritual Guide, A Course in Miracles, for the last 25 years. And Corinne has used her beautiful, inspiring story of overcoming her crippling feelings and thoughts of anxiety to not only become one of the most well-known spiritual teachers in America, but now is traversing a deep paradigm shift and dark night of the soul experiences to turn it into beautiful new view and journey into the light, love, and truth like she could never have previously imagined. So welcome back to World Awakenings, Corinne. Welcome back.
Carl, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you again.
You know, I just can't even believe, as I told the viewers and listeners, this is your second visit here, and you were on one of my earliest episodes way back in April of 2019, and here we are in what? 3/4 of the way through 2022. So awesome to have you back. But, first things first, How the heck is Gloria, your pet chicken, doing?
Oh my goodness, my pet chickens are wonderful. I love them. Little Miss Gloria did transition into heaven, but I have to tell you that as they transition, I've had the most ever one time we've had six hens. I still call on them for help when some of my current girls have ailments. I'm calling on everyone for help and support. And one of my current chickens, who her name's Holly, she's a little sweet pea. We didn't think she was gonna make it very long, and I was calling in all the help, that I could, including Gloria, including my other girls, and she's now put on weight. She's doing fantastic. And little Miss Holly loves grapes. So she comes up to my back door and I'm constantly giving her little treats. So.
I have to say, you're my only guest, I think, that has pet chickens. I love it.
I love them. My little feather babies.
Well, this is just amazing. And I have to ask you this, really. Hey, we're living in exciting times, are we not?
Whew, yeah, we sure are. We sure are. And there's no mistakes that we're all here right now. Like it's not an accident that we're all here right now. And the fact that we're called to do inner spiritual work is our being summoned to be a part of the healing as we all transition into a higher state of consciousness, the entire planet.
Well, and it's funny, it even goes back to when I started this podcast called World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment back in June of 2018. I didn't know why. I just was moved to do this. And now that over these last few years with all the craziness in the world, I realized, oh yeah, it's part of that movement to true awakening in our transition to a higher level of self-awareness.
And thank you for listening to your guidance and getting this podcast started, because I just see that as such a large part of your intuition was speaking to you, and you followed it having no idea what was to come over the past few years.
Yeah, and I think for me too, as a longtime student of A Course in Miracles, I'm still not totally consistent at, but I've started to listen a little bit more to that little quiet whisper in my ear. Even when I'm driving, I said, you really should turn here. Oh, okay. I don't question it anymore.
That's beautiful. And you're right. It can be as little as that, as subtle as a feeling to pop into that store today, or to turn here, or to pause and take a break. It's constantly talking to us, and we just have to get better and better at listening, at tuning in.
Yeah, and I really love every aspect of that. And gosh, we have so much to talk about, but, also just about this podcast, World Awakenings, it's kind of gone through its evolution and metamorphosis. My main emphasis will always be true non-dualistic spirituality based on A Course in Miracles. I've had Gary Renard on here, Cindy Laura Renard, the late lovely man, Dr. Bob Rosenthal has been on here, Fiona Williams and Maria Felipe and Maureen Muldoon, and on and on. And, David Hoffmeister, John Mundy. And I've been so fortunate to have you on. And so now what I'm excited about you is to say that your life, your purpose, your journey is taken on a whole new perspective and a path. And that would be an understatement, correct?
You see me taking a deep breath as you're saying all that. So yeah, I shared with you before we started recording that this is my first time just openly sharing about what has been unfolding over the past couple of years. I'm sort of rolling out my story chronologically on my podcast. So I appreciate this opportunity to just see what comes forward, but I'll just, if it's okay, maybe give a quick sort of overview as to all that's happened. So I started studying A Course in Miracles in 1997 because of panic attacks and severe anxiety. And looking back, so last summer 2021 was all of 2021 was a pretty intense year, but summer 2021, things were really heating up. And I realized in summer 2021, I seemed to go through a major upheaval every 12 years. 12 years prior to that was when I stopped trying to use A Course in Miracles as a Band-Aid by just slapping on a course quote when I was feeling anxious, like kind of running away from the fear to just like find something helpful in the book and feel better. I stopped running away from the anxiety and I started looking at it with the Holy Spirit. I started turning toward it, changing my direction and saying, show me, what is it that I need to see here for healing to happen? So that was the significant shift 12 years ago from last summer. So 13 years ago now, but that was when my book was born. So that was when I got the idea to write my book. And that's when that all began. 12 years prior to that, so that was back in 1997, was when I started having panic attacks. So when I realized this 12-year pattern, it was pretty jaw-dropping for me. And that night that I had that realization that it's every, at least to this point, I mean, I'm not looking to go through something else major 12 years from now, but that night when I realized that, I got up. So I had this recognition and I was sitting at my computer. I'm a night owl, so I tend to be up really late at night. And I was on my computer. I realized it and I searched for what is the significance of the number? Like I was typing that into Google. And the first thing that came up on the list was the number 12. So I clicked on it. And there was all different lines and information on the significance of the number 12. It appears in the Bible many times. And so I was like, this is so fascinating. So I get up, I walk out my door and I hope I'm not confusing my stories. I'm pretty sure it was that exact night when because there have been so many synchronicities over the past 2 years that I have hundreds of voice notes on my phone to keep everything documented. But I walked out my door, I looked at my dryer. I think I started with looking at my laptop. It was 1:11 a.m. I walk out the door. I look at my dryer. There's an hour and 11 minutes left. I come back in here to write it down. I walk back out into my kitchen and there's 1 minute and 11 seconds left on my microwave cycle. So like things like this started happening that I couldn't plan if I tried. And what has transpired over the past 2 years. So I went through a major period of upheaval. And actually, let me back up for a moment because I started getting a sense several years ago that my teachings were going to change. I had no idea how. It was just a gut sense. And I had a few people in my life that were reflecting that back to me. And so 2 summers ago, I started getting drawn to this state park in New Jersey where I felt a very, very deep connection with the land. And when I say I was drawn to this park, I was pretty obsessed with like wanting to be there all the time. And I did not understand what was happening. It was just this weird thing that I'd go to this land. And this is a preserved state park in the state of New Jersey where there are still houses standing from the 1700s. So it's there's history. And some of the history is not so nice. But the draw that I had to this land was from a place of intense love and as if I've been there before. And I would go and I would cry for no reason, just wanting to be there, feeling really, really drawn. And that was weird. Like I didn't understand what's happening. It was just strange. And I started having more experiences like that. And we can get into what some of those are, because I know that you've been tuning into my podcast and I might have some questions, but what I've found in my own journey is that, A Course in Miracles, my friend Uma Sangvi said this. She said, A Course in Miracles is an arrow. It will take us all the way home. It will take us straight to the remembrance of who it is that we truly are. And I went through this sort of unraveling where I was actually asked to release all of my attachments in my identity as a spiritual student, a spiritual teacher, my attachments to the book, A Course in Miracles. And as you can imagine, I've been doing this my entire adult life. I started when I was 19. I'm 45 now. And so I've been doing this for a long time. To be asked to let something like that go was terrifying. I'm feeling some emotion come up just as I'm talking about this. But the guidance was so strong, that sort of inner knowing of something that you just know, you have to do this. The nudge was there, the guidance was there to let go. And at this point, I had enough trust in me that we do not walk alone, that we have guides with us, that spirit wants to communicate with us, that we're not alone. I had enough trust to be able to let go, and I did. And what emerged at that time of letting go rather quickly, I mean, it was destabilizing for a while. I went into a really rough time period after letting go because I felt like the rug, was gone from underneath me.
I would say, yeah.
The guides and the synchronicities and the experience that I just shared about seeing the numbers everywhere, those experiences kicked up tenfold. I was having things happen every day. And what has since happened is that I feel, A Course in Miracles is very much a part of me. It will always be a part of me. And I still, study it, and I am still a student of it, but it's like, it's at a deeper, it's sinking in even at an even deeper level. And I see how it's an arrow. It's a pathway. And if we make it the end instead of the means, like it's a means of transcending, our identity, of waking up to who we truly are. So I had some big releasing to do surrounding that. So that's a quick overview as to what has been happening. And
I'm just really
I'm an open book, so feel free to ask whatever.
Was your attachment to this park, was that the impetus of finding this park and remembering that perhaps you had some history there? Was that kind of the impetus to this new letting go of everything you thought you knew spiritually?
I still don't know. It was just a strange experience. I still feel very drawn and connected to that land. I think what happened was that the veil was getting very thin for me. So I was having some type of perhaps past life memory association come forward. And it was that thinning of the veil. It was part of what would just continue to support me and move me forward in this massive period of unsettling and of getting to know my own intuition and my own guides even more closely. So it was almost like it was a foreshadowing of what would come, because the connection to the land, I do have to say this, it was extremely grounding. So it really helped me find my center. It helped me find a place of very deep connection and love within me. And what would come later on would be a realization that our bodies are like plants or trees. They're of the earth. Mm-hmm. There's a lesson in A Course in Miracles, I mean, all over the place, that teaches how we're not bodies, and we're not. Our minds are of God. Our minds are of truth. Our bodies are of the earth. And in my own journey, I would take an idea like I am not a body, and I'd be very much up in my head with that idea. I wouldn't be, my body wouldn't be grounded as it could be. I have a lot of excitable energy. I can get really excited and have really high energy. And I never knew how to ground, how to really feel rooted and secure in the moment, like stable in my body, because I always go to this place, well, we're not bodies, so why should I even be in my body? But what I've found, if you think of a tree, the wider the roots of a tree, the larger the canopy, like the wider the canopy of the tree can spread. So what has happened is that as I've learned how to be in my body and to feel connected to the earth beneath my feet, to feel grounded, even to the center of the earth, like imagining a grounding cord coming down through my body and it wrapping around the center of the earth. As my body grounds down and my roots go into the ground and feel connected, the upper chakras can open even more. That spiritual connection can open even more deeply when our bodies are grounded and connected to the earth. And that was an idea that I previously would have dismissed because we're not bodies. This is all a dream. I would have been very dismissive of that idea in the past. It was what I was missing. It was what I needed in order to open up even more deeply to guidance and to visions and to signs and synchronicities, because our body is of the earth. Our body is like a plant, I mean, we're animals, but it's our mind, that's of God. So having that realization and making that connection of being able to ground has only served to help me open more deeply to the spiritual realm and to have experiences of loving a tree so intensely that oneness spontaneously reveals itself to me. I don't need to work myself through a thought process to get there. It's like loving, what seems to be form out there brings forth an opening. So it's happening on its own, spontaneously at times. Sometimes I think certain thoughts, maybe to bring myself into that state of readiness to have these spiritual experiences happen. But the missing key for me in my journey, and I'm not saying that this, necessarily is going to apply to everybody, but it was that piece of being able to be in my body and be grounded. And I'll just add that in my journey, that has also meant taking a step back and dealing with old trauma from, be it my childhood or from, intergenerational patterns in my family, other lifetimes. It's been about me needing to step back to look and to allow that to be healed. And that has only served for me to be able to even ground more deeply and open more widely. So does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, yeah, this is just such a phenomenal unfolding for you. Well, we know your intense love for trees, so I'm not
and chickens.
That vision of a grounding cord coming from our body down into Mother Earth. I have done many meditations where the leader of the meditation, that was one of the visualizations. Imagine a grounding cord coming down from the base of your spine down into Mother Earth. And it is a good way to do that. But I do have to say that I mean, this is a phenomenal story for you. I know what I wanted to ask. Would you explain the thinning of the veil? I'm not sure that the listeners or the viewers really quite understand. What does that mean?
So that's an expression from A Course in Miracles, and it talks about how, well, I'll just put it into my own words. A Course in Miracles teaches us that this world is a dream, that we are individually and collectively dreaming that we are separate from our source. Call our source God, the universe, whatever, you're comfortable with. So if this is a dream, it's almost like you can imagine that we've drawn a veil over our awareness, we've kind of brought down the shades or brought down blinders to disconnect from the truth and to instead be totally preoccupied with what's going on, here in form and around us. And so by the veil getting thin, I mean those blinders that seem to put us into this one lifetime, being in this body. I tend to think that past, present, future, it's all happening at once. It's all part of the dream. And when the veil gets thin, it's like that sort of membrane between different parallel universes, perhaps, the past, present, future. Even just stick with the veil between us and God that we've pulled down, to not see. That veil gets thin in that we start to know who it is that we truly are. Because whether they're parallel universes or not, or past, present, future, whether or not that's happening all at once, it's still all being dreamed. And so the simplest way of thinking about it is that veil between, me and my awareness of God. I've pulled it down and it gets thin in that I can start to access and sense and know and feel the love of who it is that we truly are. So that's what I mean by that.
And too, Gary Renard is mentioned numerous times in his books, and especially when you become a first dedicated student of A Course in Miracles, that veil starts to disappear. He said there were times where he would just look up and things just didn't seem real, or the room was spinning, and it wasn't because he had a hangover or anything. It was because that veil was disappearing. Mm-hmm. And the other interesting thing I find is, your 12-year cycle of changes. I don't think you're the only ones. Gary Renard has said he goes through, I think, 12 or 14-year cycles. And myself,
interesting.
It's so funny that you mention them, because I haven't really thought about it, but some big changes and cycles in my life have come in 12 years.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm very curious to learn more about this. This has been an interesting thing too, is that things will happen and I'm like, what was that? Like, what is this with every 12 years? And now you're saying that you recognize that pattern too. And Gary has recognized a pattern. It's so interesting to see in cases where like something will happen and then I'll be given an explanation later on. So I'll get an answer later on. So to give you just an example, so I had an experience in my backyard of feeling, and this is my next couple of podcasts are going to be about the Divine Mother, the Black Madonna. I had this experience of like, this was probably the first experience of really truly feeling connected to the earth and to this feminine force, this feminine aspect of God. And when I had this opening, so think of this image that I shared of the tree with the roots and the canopy, so that the more we're grounded, the wider the canopy can open. I had this experience in my backyard of feeling like I was rooted in for the first time, and energetically in my body, what I didn't know then, but what I was shown later on, was that my root chakra actually opened. So our physical body, we're cool with talking about like an understanding, and I'm speaking from a Western perspective, like, it's cool to talk about muscles and bones, but like energy power centers, it's not as acceptable here in the West, but there's something to it. And we have these power centers in our body, and the root chakra power center, one of the things it's all about is about safety. So when there's trauma, that root chakra can constrict. And I was walking around for pretty much my whole life with a constricted first power center. What happened in my backyard the first time I felt rooted in was that power center opened. I was being sourced, my body, my physical body, which is like a tree or a plant, for the first time ever was being energetically sourced, like from the earth. Again, our mind is sourced from God. It's both directions. And I started having visions. So I started seeing pictures when my eyes were closed. And the pictures were of various things. The first one was of a magnificent set of angel wings. And I'll be sharing a lot of detail about this in my upcoming podcasts. I started seeing flowers, fairies, which as a course student, it's like, what? Like what fairies?
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was happening. It would happen. And I'd be like, that was interesting. Like, what was that? And then I was in this class for empaths, and I'm going to have that teacher on my podcast down the road. And she shared a bunch of we started talking about intuitive channels in the body. And there was this document, and I don't know if you know what scrying is. The thing that we typically think of when we think of scrying is like gazing into a crystal ball, like looking at something and like seeing something in a crystal ball. And there's all different ways of scrying. On the list was eyelid scrying, and it defined eyelid scrying as closing your eyes and seeing pictures. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what was happening to me. And it was simultaneously happening to my mom also. So my mom was having we weren't having the identical visions, but like they were happening at the same time. And my mom has had visions on and off forever. And I was like, Mom, it's called eyelid scrying. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's what this is called. So I've been given answers. I don't always know what's happening when it's happening, but then the answer shows up down the road, to describe and to show me what this has been. So you saying that, you've noticed a pattern like a 12-year cycle also just brought my mind to this place that if we say, if something's going on, we're having some type of experience and we don't understand, stay open, because if we're, staying open and tuning in and listening, the answer is going to show, it's going to show up in some way. And so it's been really helpful for me to now be able to look back and start to make sense of some of the things that have happened.
Wow. I'm glad you're not bored. This is, this is amazing. But I find it very interesting that this is happening to now at this point, after being such a dedicated student and teacher of the course. It's not like you were previously a spiritual slouch or a fake, living, walking, and talking your non-dualistic spirituality. I mean, it's just time. It was just time for you in your awakening and journey, huh?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, one thing that I can say is, like, we all have to evaluate, how am I walking the talk or how am I not? Like, am I saying positive things and reading positive things and not putting them into practice? There's a Course in Miracles quote, and I don't have the quote in mind, but actually maybe I do. It's about the term honesty. And it says honesty actually means consistency.
Yes.
And that nothing that you do is out of alignment with what you think. There's an alignment there. So there's consistency there. And each of us needs to be so honest with spirit. Where am I inconsistent? Where am I being truly honest and in alignment? And where am I out of honesty, or where am I inconsistent? Because when we can start to really look and be honest without guilt, and that's the thing, is like, when we're looking at the shadow side, our patterns, our ego habits, when we're looking at that, it's so important to remember that we're looking with spirit and we're looking from a place of guiltlessness, because guiltlessness is what we are made of. It's who we are. And with that guiltlessness and with that honesty, if we can take stock of, like, okay, honestly, like, what do I need? What patterns am I still doing? Am I telling little lies here and there? Am I manipulating here and there? If we can call ourselves out and bring ourselves into a place of consistency and alignment and honesty, that's when we're really walking the talk. And that's when things can really start to flow. And if we are struggling in some way, be it with anxiety, which I know very well, or depression or anger or whatever, whatever the feelings are that we're wrestling with, it's all an opportunity to learn. It's all an opportunity to grow. And I mean, A Course in Miracles lays out, a path for awakening and doing the lessons and doing the work. It works, but you have to do it. And you have to be really honest and not afraid to out your ego, even to yourself, or just to spirit. That's been a very helpful practice for me along the way. So yes, I have been walking the talk for a long time, largely driven by intense anxiety. The suffering, the panic attacks and the anxiety, especially early on, was so bad that that's what kept me, like, doing this work. But then the peace you get from it, that's the motivator, that keeps you going. Then you're motivated by peace and not pain, which is a nice little shift.
Well, and I found this quote on your website also, and I really like this. It really struck a chord with me from the A.C.I.M. It says, "You cannot distinguish between advance and retreat. Some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures, and some of your deepest retreats you have evaluated as a success." And I think all of us, and I know I can, look back, and some disasters in my life turned out to be some of the greatest things that ever happened to me in the long run, and vice versa. I go, hey, I won that. I was right. And you look back, oh man, that was really a failure.
Mm-hmm. I love that quote. I've been really tuned into that quote lately. And that's why it's so important, especially if anybody listening is going through mental health struggles, whatever, challenges we might be facing. It's so tempting for the ego to get in there and to say, you shouldn't still be feeling this way, or you should know better, or you should be further along than you are. That's the voice of fear. That's the voice of the ego. It's not going to serve us. It's not going to assist us in moving forward. So instead, it's best to come to a place of self-compassion and to remember we're doing the best we can.
Mhm.
We are, we're doing the work that we, in the best way that we possibly can. And if we can allow ourselves to be where we are. So I would literally, when I was having anxiety and struggling, I would literally say, okay, this is how I'm feeling, and it's okay. It is okay that I am not doing well right now. It is okay that I'm feeling sad or depressed or angry or anxious, because if we try to fight against that feeling and push back, all it does is make it stronger. It just kind of keeps it in place, because we're feeding the ego, because we're judging that it should be different than it is. And, we're judging ourselves. So if we can cease judging ourselves and allow ourselves to be where we are, that's not fueling that fearful voice anymore. That's not fueling the ego anymore. And therefore, it opens the way forward.
I'm really glad that you just said that. It is okay to face your dark shadows and your guilt trips and all that, because many people don't realize it's okay, and they stay in this long cycle, maybe for their entire lifetime, of just allowing that guilt and shame and whatever and trauma to grow and grow and grow until it's too late. And it is okay to do that. But I'm really curious about this too, and I'm kind of glad you were mentioning. So you've been seeing the angels and the fairies and all that stuff, and which isn't necessarily in alignment with everything that we have learned as spiritual students. But I have had many guests who are channels or ascended masters and beings from the stars and galaxies, and I wonder what was your take on this. I mean, are these beings, are they angels? Are they part of the ego illusion? I've got actually kind of confused sometimes, because I'm talking to Athela from the Sirius B galaxy, who comes through Christina Hill, and I never hear them mention the Holy Spirit. However, everyone I've ever talked with speaks nothing but love and oneness and unity. What's your take on all that?
That's a great question. First, I'll answer that question. I just want to mention too, when we were just talking about the painful stuff, no matter how far along anybody is, it's never too late to choose again. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that. If you've been struggling with something for a long time, it's never too late to choose again. So shifting over to angels and fairies and beings, I have more questions than answers. So I don't know. When the visions that I've had, I've been spending a lot of time outside, because I feel the veil gets very thin for me when I'm out in nature, and I'll even spend time outside at night. And the other night I was looking, it was a full moon, and I was looking at the moonlight on the ground, and I thought about how my visions, I wasn't seeing the actual, so the sun reflects off the moon, and then the moonlight is what I was looking at on the ground. It's almost like that was like the vision that I was looking at. I was looking at reflections. So I don't feel like I was seeing something that was like alive in front of me, but I was seeing its reflection. I wasn't looking at the sun, I was looking more at the moon, or at the moonlight on the ground. So I just wanted to clarify that. And as I've opened up my mind to, now, Course in Miracles does talk about angels. It doesn't go into them in detail, but it does talk about them. It says that we were created above the angels because our role is creation and also protection. The role of angels being, protection. The Course does not talk about fairies, but my sense is that there, it's all God. It's all, we're all joined. And just like, and I might be modifying this down the road, because this is all new for me, and I don't know, but I look out, and just like I see bugs and animals and different trees and different varieties of things, the Course talks about the real world, which is a world that we awaken to after this world. Why wouldn't there be room for various bugs and angel, and different creatures, just like we have different creatures here? And but it all being part of the love and the wholeness and the wonder. So that's, at this point, that's the best I can do with answering.
I didn't mean to throw you off, but I agree with you on that. I honestly, it's just part of all that is, and there's so much in the unseen realm that we have no clue on. Really, and so I think for me, I'm fortunate that I've always had an open heart and an open mind, and like I said, I mean, these beautiful beings that I've had on my show coming through channels, I mean, I've encountered nothing but love and talk and teaching of unity and peace. And I love every bit of it. But, there's another aspect about your whole paradigm shift that you've been going through. A couple things. You, because of your paradigm shift and your dark night of the soul, I read and heard you say that you experienced some not only physical issues, but relationship issues. I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but why do you think those occurred?
So in the beginning, as you're saying, I've shared that my body had like these annoying little health things popping up. I saw that as like almost like my body was adjusting to something. Like I felt like a big change was coming. And so it almost felt like my body was reorienting. And in that reorientation, it was just little, it was like annoying health stuff popping up. But we know, again, from A Course in Miracles, that like healing all happens at the level of the mind. Mm-hmm. And that was just my sense, at that time as to why the physical stuff was popping up. The relationship stuff was actually the catalyst for the grand period of letting go. So, it was some experiences that really shook me to my core and brought me to questioning everything, including whether or not I could continue as being a teacher and student of A Course in Miracles. And that was kind of the catalyst for being willing to step into the space of letting it all go. So we absolutely do not have to learn through pain. We do not have to learn through pain. I can't emphasize that enough.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, we do not have to learn through pain. It just so happened that these setups, these, situations in my life were like the perfect setups for me to start to see the areas in my life that needed healing, like the things that needed to come to the surface for me that I didn't and couldn't see before. So it was part of that for me, but we do not have to learn through pain.
So. And in a lot of ways too, I suppose that everybody, when physical issues and relationship and other dramas in our life, it is the path of learning and awakening. You just have to understand that and grasp onto them, go through it, and come out on the other side into the light.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, like, just to give an example of one of the things that I didn't previously realize about myself that was a problem that I needed to see and to be able to see in order to heal was I'm very attuned to how others feel and can make the mistake of taking that on. I can make, and we can call that projection, like I'm projecting how I think they're feeling and then I'm feeling that way, or just the fact that like I sense things. Also, I've owned my intuitive channels now, and I'm very intuitive and can pick up on the subtlest of things at times that aren't even, maybe said in words, but just feelings. And I was making the mistake of taking on stuff that wasn't mine, like burdensome things that were not my lessons, they were not my feelings, they were not, things for me. And so there's a question for anybody who considers themselves an empath, highly intuitive, super sensitive to others, feelings or conflicts. There's questions that have been so helpful for me in asking myself, what is mine and what is not mine? So if we can reflect on that, if we're upset about, let's say there's a relationship situation happening, and if we can get clear, okay, what in this situation is mine? Well, I think I'm Corinne. I think I'm a body. I, take responsibility for X, Y, and Z. But these other things, well, that's not mine to take on. That's that person's work to do. Those questions were game changers for me. What is mine and what is not mine? To learn, it's at least for me to take a step in learning how to stop taking on things that weren't mine to carry.
Well, and a true empath, I mean, empaths have such a problem with taking on other people's negative energy or letting their own energy be sucked out of them. And I know many empaths, they said they get home at the end of the day, they walk in the house and fall face first onto the couch and go, oh, like that.
There's this meme of, I don't know if I could find it, but it's one of my favorite memes on the internet, and it's Kermit the Frog. And he's just like sprawled out on the bed, like, I'm going to lay here for 2 weeks. Like that's how when you're an empath and you're super, super sensitive, it's like you need that quiet downtime to recharge your batteries. That's just how we charge our batteries. But being an empath is not a problem. It's a beautiful thing. Being overly empathic when we take on what is not ours to take on, that's where we can learn to start to have better energetic boundaries and, to not do that. And that's where I'll be going also down the road in my teaching with learning how to have those better energetic boundaries, because it was something that I completely lacked. If I'm totally honest, I completely lacked it.
Well, and just to remind the viewers and listeners, we're speaking to Corinne Zupko, author of the book, From Anxiety to Love, and also the host of her own podcast, From Anxiety to Love Radio, right? That's it. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yep.
Definitely have to check that out. Now, one other thing, I'm sorry, I'm kind of drilling down here deep. I hope you're not.
Go for it. No, go for it. I love it.
So, one of the things that I've followed over the last couple of years as you've gone through your little evolution here, why did you feel that you needed to take a deep dive into helping eliminate racism? And what was the reaction from your spiritual colleagues in doing so?
So this is a very, charged topic. And I was noticing forever, and I'm not the only one who's noticed this, but the Course in Miracles community is largely composed of white bodies. And I always wondered why. And in listening to Black and brown bodies who are in anti-racism educating roles, you start to learn that there are patterns at play that largely go unseen by white bodies. It's so racism. It's not like, I mean, of course, on the extreme, it is like, it's bias and it could be again from one person against another, but it's conditioning that we're raised in this world. It's the conditioning. It's a thought system that sees a caste system. There's a beautiful book by Isabel Wilkerson called Caste, and I highly recommend the book. And this hierarchy based on skin color operates in so many ways that white bodies have the advantage of staying oblivious to, and that's part of it. That's part of the problem. And so I felt a calling to, get involved and start to open this conversation. And there's a program that I'm a part of called the Love Lens, which I would encourage everybody to check out. It's currently co-hosted by me, Pastor Yolanda Batts, and Freedom Cartwright. We're finishing up. It's not a finished program yet. We're finishing the final episodes, hopefully rather soon. But this program really unpacks racism through the lens of A Course in Miracles. And it's so important to learn from Freedom and Pastor Yolanda. They are their experiences and their insights. You need to study with them and learn from them. And so there's a link to the Love Lens on my website, and currently you can get on the wait list. So we'll be, re-releasing the program down the road, but it's a phenomenal program.
I think that perhaps maybe the first time, somebody saw, well, Corinne is involved in racism, and what's that got to do with true spirituality? But when you think about it, it's like, duh, it's all oneness and unity. We are all one, and it's just within this dream of separation as individual bodies. Oh, there's a black body over there. There's a purple body over there, whatever, there's a red body, and it really is. It makes complete sense that you would jump into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should. Like if it triggers something. So you asked about feedback. It's been divided, as you can imagine. Some people think that it's the time to look at this. Other people are like, why are you doing this? Why this isn't spiritual, which I do not agree with. But it's, to me, we talk in the Love Lens about something called a white orientation, which is a layer of the ego operating system that needs to be seen to be healed. And so that's, one of the things that we are exploring in the Love Lens. And I'll just say this, that if the thought, probably for somebody in a white body, if it's triggering to think about, diving into this work, we got to look at why, what's coming up that feels heated, because there's an author, his name is Resmaa Menakem. He wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands, which I'm currently reading right now. And he talks about how, the trauma of racism is stored in the body. And it started, I don't know if it started, but there was a lot of white body to white body violence back in the Middle Ages, and it's just gotten passed down through the ages. And so white bodies who came over here to the USA, blowing that trauma into Black bodies via slavery, and there's just a lot. So that's another author that I would highly recommend. But if this topic comes with a charge, that's a signal to pause and to take some deep breaths and to come back into our bodies and to be willing to look at what's coming up, because nothing heals without our attention and our looking. It's not going to just, go away. We gotta do some work here. So thank you for the question.
And I personally want to thank you for doing that, because obviously it is so much needed, not only by me or anybody. It really, really is important work, and an ongoing work too.
Ongoing, absolutely ongoing. And I extend the thanks to Pastor Yolanda and to Freedom for being willing to have a conversation that's not always easy. So
well, I'll put the links to that program into the show notes here.
Cool, awesome.
Well, all right. Well, thank you for chatting on. I know I threw a couple things at you, and I really honor you for coming on, because I know there's a lot of emotion here. You said this is your very first podcast and chat outside of your own program. I don't think we revealed too much of your stuff that you can still put on your podcast.
Oh no, I'm an open book, and for anybody who wants to tune in, I am sharing my journey with what has happened over the past 2 years on my podcast, while it feels like I'm sharing my diary with everybody. I am interweaving, course lessons and tools in order for it to be supportive and helpful for those who are tuning in. And I'm getting some really lovely feedback. So that's, if you go to my website, FromAnxietyToLove.com, you can find a link to the book, you can find a link to the podcast. And it's exciting to be able to share.
It's definitely worth the visit. And just quickly, your book, From Anxiety to Love, that came about from your story when you were in college. You had debilitating anxiety, and you used the teachings of Course in Miracles to overcome it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
Definitely get a copy of that book. And I will put a link to that in the notes too.
Thank you so much. That's all. If anybody is struggling with anxiety, it's all super important foundational practices from A Course in Miracles that I include in that book. So it's really helpful.
Oh my gosh, Corinne Zupko, thank you so much. I'm such a joy to have you back on the show. Thank you. You are a sweetheart.
Oh, Carl, it's always a pleasure to join with you. And thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.